Welcome to Aspen Affairs and ACRA's 2022 Election Forum Series. I'm Alycin Bektesh, Public Affairs Manager with ACRA. Joining me on the show today are the two candidates vying for Pitkin County Sheriff in the November 8th election. I have incumbent Joe DiSalvo and challenger Michael Buglione here at the table with me. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Alycin.
A note for our viewers, ballots were sent out on Monday, October 17th, so check your mailboxes. This evening's forum will consist of questions submitted by ACRA's membership directed to one or both candidates. I will save time at the end of our discussion for additional comments from the candidates if there's issues that they feel they were not able to touch on based on the questions posed to them. For those of you watching on GrassRoots TV, this program is also available for streaming at grassrootstv.org or aspenchamber.org. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
Michael, I'm just going to start by asking you to share your policing philosophy. What, if any, steps you would take to align a new team to your views should you be elected?
My policing philosophies are those of the Pitkin County philosophy of the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. Live and let live. I think the transition, when it's successful, will be one that is seamless. I don't expect much disruption, and I'm looking forward to working with the folks I've worked with for years and working with the new folks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, I think your philosophy is pretty known over your tenures as our current sheriff. I am curious, in your department now, if you can share your discipline process. How would it come to your attention if there's a complaint against an officer, and what's your methods for moving forward from there?
Well, we've just had a disciplinary issue recently, and I think that's where that's coming from, Alycin. You're not slipping one by me.
We have some key members.
I have low tolerance for lying. I have low tolerance for violating somebody's constitutional rights. No tolerance for hurting somebody. And just recently, I mean, Colorado has a lie you die law. If you lie while you're in the performance of your duty, you fired almost immediately, and your post-certification is removed. Within the last 2 months, I recently had to terminate somebody because they were untruthful. And that's happened a lot in the last 12 years. It happened with a former school resource officer. And we pretty much now, the state has kept us in a real strict box of how to discipline our employees. I do believe in second chances when the law allows. But the law is getting constrictive every day. And it's really hard in the most recent case to watch somebody's career just go down the toilet over what is really an insignificant issue that, if they just had told the truth, because it was so insignificant, that person probably is never going to be a police officer in Colorado and probably never in the country again. So we do have a hard line on that. On the other hand, there are some people like Sarah, who's my administrative assistant, who had a DUI. Her driving is not part of her job. And I can change the job description when I want. But she was hired without a license, without a car, actually. And I saw no reason for somebody who never leaves my office and drives the bus back. She's an administrator, and takes the bus back and forth to work, why I shouldn't keep her employed. She's an excellent employee, and it's hard to get employees. So I think cutting somebody's throat over that is just not the person I want to be.
Well, you're touching on an issue that's very near and dear to the business community's heart, which is staffing. You're both aware that our entire business community is struggling to recruit and retain employees. So I'm wondering if you can relate to this within the Sheriff's Department and any tactics you have in mind for addressing this need. Michael, I'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. Since I've announced my campaign on March 4th, I haven't wavered from the 4 pillars of what I'm running for. And housing for deputies is one of them. Joe, as recently as 2020, when the undersheriff retired, knew there was a housing issue and said it in the Aspen Times. And as far as I know, hasn't done anything about it. That is going to be one of my priorities, is to get housing for the deputies. If they want to live in Glenwood because that's where they can afford a house, that's fine. But For those that want to live in Pitkin County, Basalt, Aspen, Snowmass, rural Pitkin County, I want to provide with the county that housing for them.
So out of the county budget, you're saying? Yeah, okay.
And there's another part of that. I'll try and keep it real simple. In order to renew your lease yearly, you have to show that you're in the pool to get your own housing. Because I don't want your housing tied to your job. Okay? So hopefully they win the lottery and able to buy the house somewhere and live in their home with their kids or alone, whatever their lifestyle's like. And as we know, Joe and I know, we go back and forth sometimes, Aspen Police Department, Sheriff's Office. That's probably the biggest, the most common exchange. If someone joins my department and they want to switch over to Aspen Police Department, go for it when you get your after housing. So, again, I don't want your housing tied to your job.
Joe, some recruiting or retention tactics within the Sheriff's Department?
I really think we've got some amazing things going on. I mean, as we've seen with the lumberyard, Alycin, these projects are years and years and years out. So we have to address retention and retainment right now. What the county did, I mean, and we work together, is first of all, every deputy that's working on off hours, because we really believe in a work-life balance. We're hearing it all over the country. So if you're working a shift that starts at 6 p.m. and it goes to 6 a.m. and you're away from your wife and your kids, you get a 7% increase in your salary that for being that shift differential, as we call it. We also started a new program. It's called Sigma Tactical, which is where like 80% of cops die from heart disease, coronary heart disease. And we went through this yesterday on the county budget. I don't know if you were watching it or not. But we developed a program that was basically $200 per deputy, almost nothing, where they could get a stress test and they could get their vascular system checked out. I'm really proud to say that test caught something on somebody that could have been deadly in the matter of a year. We've got to look at creative ways to support the employees. What the county did now is so people could get into RO housing. Is if you and I are married and we want $1 million home, we can't afford $1 million mortgage, the county will buy you half out. So we're partners, $500. Now you and I only have to come up with a mortgage for $500,000. I think that's really an innovative way to get around the housing until we actually have the structure. I think my deputies need to be in shape to do their job. We give them fitness time to work out, up to 4 hours a week. I think it's incumbent on every employer in Pitkin County to really get creative with how they're going to do this, whether it's work at home, car stipends, fuel stipends, things like that. I think need parking stipends. I think your members really got to start getting creative on how we're going to solve this problem, because even just a house isn't going to do it. You still got to buy $30 hamburger. You still got to commute and gas and fight traffic and parking. So I think a structure alone is not going to solve this problem.
Absolutely. Of course, we provide resources for our businesses saying that not just salary and benefits, but people want that workplace environment. That is key as they're looking for to stay or move jobs.
And Alycin, I also encourage people still, post-COVID, to work from home when they can.
Okay. Have you heard issues of morale among your staff? How does that come to you? Or how would people get that to you? And what adjustments, I guess, if any, have you made to address that?
Right now, any morale issues you're hearing is from outside the organization and probably uninformed. I think right now we have one of the best staffs we've ever had in my 37-year history. You're looking at people who get some pretty big statewide recognition. Our emergency manager was voted the best in the state in 2021. I have a director of operations, an undersheriff who was 40 out of 40. Okay, 40 police officers in the world under 40 were chosen to be the best on the globe, and he was one of them. I think our staff is strong. We've got some really good young people that I'm looking forward to see how they mature. But Parker Lathrop was one of the best catches I ever made. I mean, when he left the Aspen Fire Department, he landed right in my lap, and man, he hit the ground running. Body cameras he's doing. If there's a morale issue, it is probably coming from outside the organization. I would suggest people interview my deputies.
Do you have any examples of times you've been able to improve morale or address morale?
Actually, Alex, we found out through an interview with one of my sergeants I said, how do you plan to manage? And she had said, I find people will do almost anything if they know why. So we started an internal communicate. We have an internal podcast. We have a little radio station set up where we record these things. And Alex specifically believed more than I did in over-communicating. So we get the message out, and I think once people know why they're doing something, they will be the tip of the spear and get anything done. So I think it's communication.
Thank you. Michael, I'm going to turn similar questions to you. Of course, you're not in
Okay.
the role right now.
Thank you.
You addressed this a little bit. If you win, do you see yourself making staffing changes in the administration and some of the leadership? How would that affect morale, or how are you going to go in and address morale?
Again, I expect it be a seamless transition. If it's running as smoothly as Joe's saying, I'll take time. I'm not going to go in there and start putting people away and firing people and switching around. I need to see it, live it, and feel it before I can make a change that's going to benefit the sheriff's office. I don't think anybody needs to be concerned about their job, and I will be there. I'll boost the morale better than what it is today.
Our public and our workforce continuously cite mental health and addressing mental health issues in our community as a top priority. So we're going to have several questions on that topic as well. Joe, I want to start within your department and then move out. So what is the toll of that role on your deputies and law enforcement when you're working in that role in our community? And do we have support for our team if they have a really tough day, a hard incident, PTSD, those types of things?
It's very hard, and yes. Policing in a small community is much more difficult than the Manhattan-type policing. One of my best examples is I have a friend who was a New York City police officer for over 30 years. He came to visit here, and he was walking around, and cars were stopping for pedestrians, and dogs were playing with cats, and it was just a beautiful environment. And he said, "This isn't policing, and I've seen it all." And I said, "Hey, man, Kenny, how many dead bodies have you seen?" He said, he went off hundreds and thousands, and he was just, I said, "How many do you know?" 0. So when Michael and I go, and the last time we see our friends, whether it's Hunter, Bob, I could go down the list, and we zip up the bag. It really, really takes a lot out of people. Seeing little children, dying. It's not, there's nothing good about it. Nobody should have to see this. But since we do have a mental health program that's associated with the Hope Center and others where we could, I'll be happy to pay for anybody to go to therapy for a year if it takes to get them back on track. That will be on my dime. But those injuries have to be healed early. They have to be addressed, and we got to drop this macho thing that this organization has never had that. That macho cop thing. If somebody's hurting, we know it and we address it. I'm a proponent of healing your brain.
Michael, are you along those same lines?
Yes. As a deputy coroner for 10 years, I know exactly the sentiment. And it's not easy. There's definitely PTSD, because we're not dodging bullets or chasing bad guys day after day and seeing horrible things day after day. There's definitely a PTSD component of it. And we need to seek mental health. I was on this critical incident stress management team for years where it was peer-based, that when there was a horrible incident involving some fatality, we got together as a peer team with clinicians, and it wasn't a therapy session. It was just a way for the room, whether you had 6 people or 28 people there, to talk about how it happened from the 911 call to the doctor pronouncing the person deceased. And what it did for those, because you're always wondering, what could I have done different? What could they have done different? And it just filled those holes as long as everybody would participate. And you didn't have to participate, but I used to encourage those to participate because you may fill the hole for one person that is really suffering. And so they were very helpful. I was proud to be part of that team.
Well, along with both of you taking the time to work to be our next sheriff and dedicating your time that way, I'm so grateful for both of you in your time as law enforcement. I agree, it's not easy, and I think this town is particularly hard for all the reasons you mentioned, from the backcountry to being alone in your apartment. I'm wondering then, when we address community mental health needs, are there steps that could be taken, Joe, that would help people prior to an incident? You know, we can talk about what happens when deputies get to a call. Is there anything we can do for our community, or steps that you've taken already that helps support the community prior to it coming to law enforcement involvement?
You know, Michael and I both share the same passion for, I hope everyone in this community is passionate about fixing or addressing mental health. It's clearly a national problem. It's not just an Aspen problem. What I struggle with, and it just happened a few nights ago, is somebody's calling, they're suicidal, or their niece is, in this case, their niece was suicidal. And you're talking to them, you know, we have to really ask people. There was, I think, Michael, I think it was the Hope Center said, "Are you okay?" or asked the question a few years ago.
Those buttons.
They had a
Yes.
program was like, "Are you okay?" or
Yeah.
"How
Let's
are
just
you?"
talk, or-
or let's just talk, whatever. I think we need to start doing that
We
and
can
not be afraid of the answer. You know, I mean, people care. You know, or they see you're having a bad couple of weeks. I mean, people have bad days, couple of days. But when it starts to turn into weeks and you're seeing somebody who's really just not themselves, it's incumbent on us to say, "Alycin, what the heck's going on? And let me lead you to these resources." People are reluctant to do that. They might lose a friend, they might lose a friendship, they might piss somebody off. Not good enough reasons not to say it. So I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I don't think in my lifetime I'm going to see this problem cured, because I think we're just starting to recognize it, and recognition means that someday we can fix it. So I think we're just there now, and this community is so far above any other. I mean, the resources we have for mental health are good. I wish they were fantastic. This problem's never going away. We need to address it, and I think we're working on it.
What are some additional trainings that the officers could get? Is there more people on the staff who are maybe trained in a different way, either if inmates return to the jail or out on the scene, that I don't know, are innovative in
the PAC program, I think, is probably at the top of the list. I mean, when you're sending cops out, when I was just starting this, and I would go out and there would be somebody in such mental distress, it really was hard because I had no tools to help. And now you're just watching somebody suffer. And then what would happen is sometimes there would be a clash, and then the violence, and then there would be a shooting or a tasing or whatever, just because somebody's mentally ill. So when we respond with a clinician, I think that really is a way to let the pressure off the pressure cooker and have a professional deal with the person that's struggling, and the cop could focus on the safety of it. I mean, we have seen clinicians really change the way outcomes could have been. Especially in violent situations.
And Michael, are you up on, I guess, the newest policing techniques or ways to handle situations like this? Do you have ideas for training or staffing?
Yes. I think before the PAC program was put in place, there was a short bridge of where we all went to crisis intervention training, which was great. It gave us better tools, okay. I met with 2 PAC officers today, and was able to have a great conversation with them. And that is just such a better tool. Having been on calls where people are suicidal and an agency was 20 minutes away, clinician to help, and 2.5 hours later, they're not there, and you're following a suicidal person around. You don't want to put them in handcuffs because they didn't do anything wrong. You got to keep a close watch because you don't want them to go for a night. It was just a very tense, stressful 2.5 hours until another agency showed up. And it was just like, let this person do their job, talk to this person, because it wasn't working for the deputies there. He didn't want to talk to a uniform. And the other agency showed up, and it was like, okay, this is great. And now we can deal with the safety of that person, the family, the scene. So the PAC program is great. I think it needs to be utilized a little more, and who knows what the next tool is going to be.
Okay.
But I don't think, some people say, well, maybe PAC people start, being, no, you don't want them being cops. You want them being plainclothes soft-looking, and let the law enforcement be the law enforcement.
And Alycin, every deputy is still CIT trained.
Oh,
So
very
it's
nice.
a double whammy, I guess. I can only speak for my own agency. I think the Aspen Police is. I'm not sure about snowmass or assault.
I'm going to turn to our visiting population, who of course has a big effect on the economy, and our businesses value them. Michael, have you thought about some of the partnerships it takes, I guess, to facilitate safety for them? I'm thinking of the airplanes that went off the runway more than once this summer, facilitating partnerships with the airport, their
Operations.
own, yeah, their ops, their fire guys, Mountain Rescue Aspen, when we have someone who's a overdue hiker is reported. How are you going to work with those agencies that are serving kind of that greater population?
I think all those agreements, and when I say agreements, those written agreements are already in place.
Yes.
I think more important is to create that rapport and relationship with Mountain Rescue and the airport and the fire department and ambulance district. And really, piece of paper, yes, they're going to respond, but you also need to work together on the scene. So I would just be out there with those leaders, the Gabes, the Rick, the Scott Thompsons, and Jordan from MRA, and just create a better friendship with them. So when they're not afraid to call, their phone numbers at your fingertip, and we got a problem, we need your help. So it would just be to make a deeper, better relationship.
Joe, can you explain a little bit more? Is the sheriff at incident command of a Mountain Rescue Aspen incident? How is that partnership? How does that go right now?
Yeah, so Alycin, I always make a joke that in 1865, the sheriff must have been out of the room when they were doling out responsibilities, because they gave us fire warden and search and rescue. And it's not something exactly we train on. So I'm really fortunate that we have Mountain Rescue Aspen, that I think is probably one of the top in the state.
Agreed.
And no doubt. So I'm blessed to have them. I mean, I know other sheriffs in our neighboring county, Gunnison County, don't have the resource that we have, and we end up doing a lot of mutual aids for them and managing their own rescues. So I think Mountain Rescue Aspen is a group of 50 men and women that have clearly established themselves as the best of the best in the state. We often send them out. They are underneath the sheriff's office, and I manage the incidents when they go out. We provide an incident commander. They provide an operations section chief. But also, as I said, recently we're deployed as a hoist team. There's not a lot of people who could hang from the end of a Black Hawk helicopter and get hoisted with the person out of there, and we do that in other counties and get called all the time. So I think the mountain rescue, when people come to visit here, Alycin, when they go out, they need to be prepared, okay? Go online and figure out what it means. Don't go climb Capitol in flip-flops, which we've had. Be prepared, know your limitations, and I'm talking to your visitors now.
Absolutely.
Know your limitations: water, food, warm clothes, a tent, sleeping bag, whatever. Most hikes people go on are not hikes. These are technical climbs, and they get in over their head really quick. So we want people to know that we're there for them, and we have some really unique ways of them to contact us in the middle of nowhere. But I think they got to go out and be prepared. So when your mountaineer or any of your customers are seeing one of us city slickers saying we're going to climb Capitol, I hope they give them a checklist of things to bring with them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good idea to plan for. If you're going on a 2-hour trip, plan for more 4 to 8 hours. If you're going on a 1-day trip, plan for 2 to 3 days. MRA, they're just a fantastic organization, and they do so much more. They help with the marathons, and just everything out in the backcountry, and they're volunteering their time. And people have asked me when I was command of a mission, how come you don't charge anybody? Why don't you charge for these resources? Because if we charge, no one would call. So it's got to remain free. They can get their...
I have my COSAR.
There you go.
Yep.
They get their COSAR card to cover some hard costs. But no, could you imagine your buddy's hurt and you don't want to call because it's going to cost $10,000? It's free. It'll always be free.
Thank you. Joe, how do you take into consideration the resilience of the business community when it comes to safety versus economy? I'm thinking of the Independence Pass incident, where we already had a fire in a canyon. Now visitors can't come over Independence Pass. I think this is 2020, but you made the call to shut that down kind of indefinitely until the situation was sorted. So what are you weighing there?
Well, not excuse me, not just the pass, Alycin. I got to tell you, when we were in COVID, the first few months of COVID, and I was in that command post, well, first of all, for the first few weeks, we were all scared. Looking at this town like a ghost town, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if we were going to open or close or whatever. So when we were in the middle of that and we were talking about how we're going to bring this place back to life, the business community was front and center on this. How are we going to operate restaurants? Masks. We had, as you know, some scofflaws, and how are we going to deal with them? So I think the business community, especially with the ski company, I have a real tight relationship with Kaplan and Rigney and the boys up there. And I think that whenever we make major decisions, that these partners are involved. I mean, clearly I can't go to I was going to say the Red Onion, but a bar and talk to everybody. And but I think these bigger companies, the City of Aspen, Ski Company, are always in the front of our mind. How is my decision going to affect your pocketbook? And that's really what ACRA is.
Yep.
We're protecting your customers' businesses and their livelihoods. And I know if I turn the pass off, it affects that jewelry store. I totally understand it. I make hard decisions that affect a lot of people, and they don't always make everybody happy. But I'm doing the best I can with the information I have, and you voted for me to trust me to make those decisions. So we got called out a few times by Garfield County commissioners and some of our own ACRA members, but I still think we're doing the right thing for the whole.
I want to stay on that since you brought it up, those early times of COVID as we were reopening. I do remember your philosophy being education over enforcement for things like the mask ordinance. And those frontline workers who instead were kind of taking that enforcement role, no, you're not allowed in here without the mask, getting into, once we did open and those floodgates came because no one could travel anywhere else, so they were all driving to Aspen and they were maybe rude and a different clientele than we had seen in the past. That we heard from the businesses that it took a toll. Why isn't law enforcement the ones to say, don't put a mask on? Why do I have to take this abuse while I'm just hostessing at a restaurant? I'm looking back on it now, and man, you just gave me goosebumps. Those first few months were so scary, just remembering what it was like here. Looking back on it now, would you take that role a little differently?
Well, keep in mind, it was a public health ordinance, so there really wasn't a law enforcement component to it. I couldn't write you a ticket for not having your mask on. So it was more of a public health ordinance, and we did put a lot on the workers in restaurants and shops. We can't be everywhere at once. I thought the Aspen Police Department did a terrific job. They were dealing with it more than I was. I mean, we've got a handful of bars and restaurants in Pitkin County, but I think they did a fantastic job. I do think the scofflaws hurt us.
Yeah.
I don't think that was doing anybody any favors, and it was selfish.
When you say the scofflaws, you mean the private parties and things like that?
More a specific business that I'm not going to mention.
Okay.
They might be a chamber member.
Whatever iteration they're in now. Well, and I think there was some comeuppance for some of those.
Yeah, eventually,
yeah.
You're right, there was.
So let's move on to some of these large-scale events that do affect, of course, our community, our businesses, such as the X Games, which I could think of as far as county events, 4th of July in Aspen, Jazz Aspen Labor Day Festival and Snowmass. I want to hear from both of you your ideas about the ideal involvement in incident command and your role specifically. Do you think our community is prepared if there is a big natural disaster when we're at that kind of max capacity, or man-made incidents? More of the incidents we're seeing in other communities of shooter or terrorism type things. Michael, are we prepared, and what is your role in those kind of mass situations when we're really maxed out?
I think we're prepared. We could be more prepared. I've mentioned this before in other interviews. I met with the schools with this amazing security system that it doesn't have to be in one, install it in the school, but you can also buy another system make it robust as you want or as small as you want. Where, for instance, food and wine, all the security guys can be walking around, and then there'd be buttons posted throughout that once the system's activated, it'll alert law enforcement, all first responders, and others. There'd be a training component to this. Within 3 to 4 seconds, you can get first responders getting there. Instead of someone dialing 911, what's the address of your emergency? I don't know where we are, and tourists is calling. 30, 40, 50 seconds or more go by. This would alert, so it could be used at Ideas Fest. It could be used at X Games. And as the sheriff, you have that phone call that you can make and get the resources there to help you sort out what's happening. But initially, that if you're talking a shooter, it needs to come from within. We need to neutralize that shooter and stop the violence. The aftermath is probably where you're going to need more of the resources.
And I love all the new ideas. I'm going to keep asking, is that
Please.
then out of the sheriff's budget? Is that a new expense of this button?
That could be something.
Device?
You know what? To do all the schools in a very, again, robust system where there's a button in each classroom was about $80,000
Okay.
per school.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
A small portion.
So if
for the
the emergency manager purchases a system similar to this one, whatever, and we train the people at Food and Wine, we train the people at X Games, and train the people at Ideas Fest to if something happens, this is what you do, and they'll know that the troops are on their way, the medics, the fire department, the law enforcement, all the first responders that are going to be there a lot quicker than if someone's dialing 911.
And thanks for using Food and Wine, ACRA's signature event. I don't know why I didn't use that as my example and toot our own horn a little bit. Joey, you've also mentioned fires. So I'm wondering, please feel free to answer that question, but also as it pertains to natural disasters.
Well, I want one of the clarifications. Is the question, Alycin, how these major events affect your customers?
Well, I know that these are important, and I don't know how safe we are. Like, are we prepared for when everyone's around?
Yeah,
and
I agree.
we have one street out, you know?
Yeah, I agree. These are big, large-scale events. By the way, thanks for not mentioning that I canceled fireworks and screwed up your whole life. So I really appreciate that. I really think fireworks
it's
should
on the
probably
record
be
now.
a thing of the past. Yeah, these large-scale incidents, I think we are very, very, very prepared for it.
Okay.
I mean, we train at a high level with tabletop incidents. Our incident management team, which Michael, was part of, is a gigantic machine of cooperators from all over this valley that are brought in case of emergency. And, what's the beautiful part about being a sheriff that's different than the chief of police is when I need help, 64 sheriffs will turn off everything they have and turn all their resources to right here.
64 counties in Colorado, and that's why you're saying that.
Right. So when I was on the board, the County Sheriffs of Colorado board, I realized how that brotherhood is. I mean, Sheriff Valerio, for anything people say about him, that man has helped us more in the last few years than any other sheriff in Colorado. And I'm talking about responses to very dangerous incidents where we need a SWAT team that I don't have. So I think that we are very prepared with the resources we have. When those large-scale X Games type incidents comes in, they come with an overhead management team that is really capable of doing a lot if something went wrong. I think the worst thing we've had happen out there, thank God, has been weather events.
Right.
Those really nasty, cold, blowy storms that come in quickly. Fire is my number one concern. It scares the hell out of me, and it should all Coloradans. I thought, just to open the can of worms, Alycin, in the last few weeks when we saw the Castle Creek Bridge under it with its problems, I got to tell you, everybody in my business was saying, how are we going to get out of here? And say it for what it's worth, the straight shot is, I think, probably where we need to go to evacuate this community. We're not going to go down Power Plant Road. We're not going to use that worn-out old bridge. So I think that discussion needs to change from the character of Aspen to how we're going to save lives, of how we're going to get out of here. Especially, wildfire season is most dangerous right now.
Yeah.
So if we have ice and snow up there, we could really have a fire here that is a one-way out situation.
Michael, a question came up a couple times that I want to give you a chance to answer, and it's about your current work, employment in town, and any relation to developer Mark Hunt. So I do want to clarify, you are a construction superintendent, I believe for Centaur, is that
No
accurate?
longer.
No longer. Is that on your own? I guess what projects are you currently working in, or what does that job look like?
I'm working on a project on American Way. It's just at the base of Red Mountain. It's several, I'll leave the millions off the table.
Private residence.
Yes, private residence. I am accountable for budgets, for scheduling, for deadlines, for safety. And you asked me, did I work for Mark Hunt?
Yeah.
I worked for Centaur Construction.
Okay.
Centaur Construction was awarded the bid to build the RH
Oh, okay.
guest house home at the Old Crystal Palace.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about enforcement more. We touched on COVID-19 and the face masks and kind of what role should law enforcement take there. The big topic this year, short-term rentals, because we're always got to bring something up. And the county did just pass a new license law and regulations for short-term rentals. This takes effect in the county through Red Mountain homes that have kind of been converted to more hotel properties because they're constantly rented by visitors. There are noise ordinances in that licensure. There are trash components, be bear safe. Of course, if there was any kind of fire restrictions and people were using their fancy fire pits in their backyard. I do want to know where both of you would sit. Is this, again, the kind of thing where it's education, or is this the kind of thing where we're going to start handing out some tickets?
I think it's education. Because if you start handing out tickets, they may decide to go to Vail next year. We want them to come here. And we want them to buy and eat and do everything else here. So again, it's education. It's the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. If they're not learning after several nights of education, maybe you have to go the next step. I think it's really up to the rental agencies to get that education to them months in advance. People coming from wherever don't know about the bears. So there's not going to be a bear here. We'll just leave the trash out here and we'll throw it in the bin tomorrow. That doesn't work. So the initial education needs to come from the people renting leasing the property out, and then the follow-up education comes from us. We want them to come back.
Thank you. Joey, same question.
I'm just a small country sheriff. I don't know much about STRs, but I do own one. And, when this first came up, I brought some proposals to the city and the county about how other communities were successfully managing STRs. Going back to, remember, it will now be a zoning issue, not a law enforcement issue.
Okay.
It's a zoning issue. And we have a pretty robust zoning department at the county. I think the city does as well. So I really think it will be incumbent on them to patrol. I really think we need to know when and where people are in these homes and see if they're compliant. I mean, it's 2 people per bedroom is usually what the standard is. No outside music, no loud parties, things like that. So I think the burden is going to shift away from law enforcement, and this is going to be a zoning issue.
My most fascinating question I saved for the end until it's time for you guys to make further comments if you wish. And I didn't know whether to put it at the beginning or the end, but it's about our broader business and economy, and why would a business owner care who the sheriff is? So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about this. What effect on a local community, economy, business, and the workforce, why does it matter which one of you wins? So, Michael, I'll start with you.
I think business owners, such as my wife in town, really want to know that their customers are going to be safe. And that starts whether they're driving here or flying here, and getting on the highway, and getting to their hotel, and walking the streets. It's obviously a partnership with the Aspen Police Department because this is their city and most of the businesses are in the city. But we need to make our tourists know they're safe, not just feel safe, know they're safe. And I think they do feel safe, or else they wouldn't come here. You're asking what would I do different, or that, because that's what.
Why, you being in that position, what difference does that make?
I don't know if there really is a big difference. Again, we would just keep going, making it safer. The people coming for food and wine. Hey, folks, we have this new system in place. If you see something weird, a guy with a gun, just push that button over there, and cops will be here in a few seconds. So yes, we can definitely make it safer.
Joey, same question to you. I'm a business owner. Why should I even look up at this race? Does it matter to me?
Well, first of all, I think that there's not a lot of business owners in this community that aren't familiar with the history of the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office. And I do think it is a source of tourism, and you could elaborate that over a cup of coffee with me. But I do think people come here with the expectation that this enlightened, tolerant brand of law enforcement is still going to be in this valley. And whether you visit here from California, New York, or Washington or Florida, people know the legacy. People understand that, you see it when my officers pull people over. Aren't I going to get a warning? That's what we're expected. I think when people visit here, they still have that perception of what Pitkin County policing is all about, and we haven't changed. They're never disappointed when they come here. Granted, we don't have Hunter anymore or Bob or whatever, but the framework is still very strong. That these people are reading about from books in the 70s and 80s and 90s and even the 2000s. And I think people come here with the expectation of a different brand of policing. And I don't think they're ever disappointed. I'm very proud of our legacy. I think I probably am the last link in the chain, the direct link to Sheriff Keenest and Hunter, and I missed them all. Losing Bob was horrible for our community. People want to come here and see Bob. He was kind of a fixture. When you hung out with him, you saw people coming here year after year, and they go, "I saw you last." So he's kind of like an attraction of sort for ACRA. I'm sorry you missed the boat on that, Alycin, because we probably could have propped him up on Main Street and sold photos with him for $5 a piece and made a lot of money. But I think the visitors come here, and if they've already visited here, they expect this enlightened brand of law enforcement. If they've never been here, I think they're looking forward to dealing with it.
You mentioned the legacy, so I do have that question for both of you. Joey, if you are reelected right now, are you running the next time and the next time? This is actually one of our elected positions that are not term limited. Yeah. So I'm curious about where you see this going.
Alycin, I've really changed my mind about term limits.
Okay.
And it started from above me. Guys like Chuck Grassley and these people are 200 years old that are making decisions about your body.
Right.
I really find really hard for me to take. This position, like most, what's hard for me is every 4 years I see men and one lady that I know in the 64 counties that are out of work. Mm-hmm. It's really hard on them. This should probably be a 4-term limit. I think I could go as long as I want. Or as long as the people want me, I should say. I'm trying to win today, not in 4. Don't hold me to the fire for 4 years from now. It's impossible to ask, but I'm starting to I haven't gone over the edge yet, but I'm starting to think term limits, especially in the Congress and Senate, are going to be crucial. It may be different at our level because people will get used to seeing the same sheriff. And Alycin, what gets missed is term limits are inherently built in. Every 4 years, I still got to win my job. Mm-hmm. So you would think that the voting process is more or less the term limit in itself. And if we keep winning and they want us, is that all that bad, especially in a small community? I got to think about it. It's a question that's been on my mind lately.
I was having very similar thoughts about Congress just this morning on my dog walk.
I really think if you're a man, you should have nothing to do with voting on certain issues that are in front of our Congress right now.
Print that now. Michael?
I agree. I have 2 young daughters, and I tell them, you need to change this, okay? I can change it. I can still vote, but you need to advocate for you and your body and your friends and everything else. I've said it. I've been saying it for a long time. Yeah, if you're a woman, us guys really shouldn't have a say in what you're doing. I think term limits for the sheriff's office should be 3.
Okay.
And I'd like to think that if what you set out to do when you initially ran, if it takes more than 12 years, something's not right. I know new things come up. But 12 years is a long time. I think maybe you lose the energy or the, in any office. You can't be that excited about coming to work after 12 years. So yeah, I believe in term limits. I think for locally, it's 3 terms.
Is your hope 12, or are you trying to get in and make some changes and then you'll see 4 years from now?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Is your hope to do 12?
Yes.
All right. You didn't each get posed the exact same question, so I do want to make some time now for you to bring up anything that came to mind that you jotted down as we were discussing, if there's anything remaining. Joey, any thoughts?
No, I just thanks for having us, Alycin. I think it was a good conversation.
It was.
I mean, the business community needs to be heard. Unfortunately, the sheriff is not really the business community. It is the city of Aspen. But, I do shop. I live in town, shop downtown. I know a lot of the people I'm talking to by name. And I want to make myself available to your customers whenever they need me. Don't let a uniform color stop from calling me, please.
I think this is a great forum. Again, like Joe said, most of the businesses are in the city of Aspen, so maybe hold this when the new chief is, when they're trying to pick a new chief.
Yep.
This would be a great forum for your customers to get involved.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time and speaking to that business community who may or may not be directly under you. This is Sheriff Joe DiSalvo and Challenger Michael Buglione. You've joined us on Aspen Affairs this evening. Again, these questions were submitted by the ACRA business community, and you can see our full election forum, including ballot measures and County Commissioner District 2 race, online at grassrootstv.org or aspenchamber.org. I'm Alycin Bektesh. Good evening.